Lucía learned the sound of hunger before she learned how to laugh. It was a hollow, aching whisper that followed her everywhere, through the cracked walls of their small adobe house, through the dusty streets of the village, even into her dreams. So many nights it growled so loudly it felt like a living thing inside her. At 16, she was already thin as a shadow, her dark eyes too large for her face, her hands rough from work that never seemed to earn her a full meal. People said her mother was strict, that hardship had hardened her heart. But Lucía knew the truth was simpler and crueler. In that house, love was rationed, and food was used as punishment. Every morning before the sun rose over the hills, Lucía swept the yard, fetched water, and prepared breakfast she rarely tasted. Her mother, Doña Rosa, sat at the small wooden table, counting tortillas as if they were coins. Two for herself, sometimes one for Lucía, often none. "You didn't work hard enough yesterday," she would say, without looking up. Or, "You must learn discipline." Lucía learned something else instead, how to swallow hunger along with her tears, how to smile so neighbors wouldn't ask questions, how to dream quietly so her dreams couldn't be taken away too. The village was small, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your story, or at least the version they preferred to believe. They saw Lucía as shy, obedient, invisible. They didn't see the way she lingered near bakeries, breathing in the smell of bread as if it could feed her. They didn't see her saving crumbs in a cloth, hiding them under her mattress for nights when her stomach cramped so badly she thought she might disappear entirely. And they certainly didn't see the quiet strength that kept her standing when everything else tried to break her. One afternoon, as the sun burned low and the heat shimmered over the road, Lucía was sent to the edge of town to sell a small basket of eggs. It was a long walk, and her legs trembled with weakness, but she went without complaint. Hunger had taught her that resistance often made things worse. On her way back, the sky darkened suddenly, clouds rolling in like a warning. Rain began to fall hard and fast, soaking her thin dress. She took shelter under a mesquite tree near a ranch she had only heard whispers about. The place belonged to a shaman named Mateo. Mateo was known in the village, though few really knew him. He owned a modest ranch just beyond the fields, worked from dawn until night, and spoke so softly that people leaned in when he talked, or missed his words entirely. Some said he was lonely, others said he preferred it that way. He had lost his parents young and built his life with his own hands, brick by brick, fence by fence. What no one said, because no one noticed, was that Mateo watched the world with a deep, careful kindness, the kind that didn't announce itself. When Mateo saw Lucía standing in the rain, clutching her empty basket, something in him stirred. He hesitated. Shyness had a way of freezing him in place. But then he remembered what it felt like to be young and alone, soaked by circumstances beyond your control. He approached her slowly, holding an old umbrella. "You catch a cold," he said gently, his voice almost lost in the rain. Lucía flinched at first. Kindness, when you're starving, can feel dangerous. But his eyes held no judgment, only concern. She accepted the umbrella with a nod, unable to find her voice. Mateo noticed how thin she was, how her hands shook. Without making a show of it, he offered her a piece of bread wrapped in cloth. "I was on my way to eat," he said, as if it were nothing. "You can have this." Lucía stared at the bread, warm and soft, and felt tears sting her eyes. She had been hungry all day. Slowly, as if afraid it might vanish, she took it and ate. Mateo turned away, pretending to check the fence, giving her privacy. In that small act, something shifted, a realization bloomed quietly in Lucía's chest. The world, perhaps, still held people who saw her. That day marked the beginning of small, unexpected changes. Mateo didn't ask questions, didn't pry. Whenever Lucía passed by the ranch on errands, there was sometimes fruit left on the fence, or a bag of beans, or bread wrapped in cloth. He never said it was for her, but she knew. She also knew to hide it carefully when she returned home. Hunger still ruled her life, but now hope had joined it, fragile yet persistent. Doña Rosa noticed the changes. Lucía's eyes were brighter, her step steadier. Suspicion crept into her voice. "Where are you getting this energy?" she demanded one evening. Lucía lowered her gaze and said nothing. Silence had become her shield. Time passed, and whispers grew louder. People talked about Mateo's generosity, about how he helped neighbors quietly, never asking for praise. They also talked about Lucía, about how she seemed different. When Doña Rosa announced suddenly that Lucía would be married, to Mateo, of all people, the village buzzed with shock. Some assumed it was an arrangement of convenience, others that Lucía was being sent away like an unwanted burden. Lucía herself was terrified. Marriage, to her, sounded like another form of captivity. But when Mateo came to speak with her, his hands trembling slightly, his eyes sincere, she listened. "I won't force you," he said. "I just... I thought maybe we could help each other. You deserve a life with enough food, enough kindness. And I could use a partner, not a servant." No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a burden, not as a child to be disciplined, but as a person with worth. She said yes, not because she fully understood what lay ahead, but because something in her trusted him. The wedding was simple. No grand feast, no music loud enough to shake the walls. Yet for Lucía, it felt like stepping into another world. The first night at the ranch, Mateo set a plate of food in front of her, beans, rice, tortillas, warm soup, and waited patiently. "You don't have to finish it," he said softly. "There will be more tomorrow." She cried as she ate, each bite heavy with disbelief. No one took the plate away. No one scolded her for being slow, for being hungry. For the first time in her life, she went to bed with a full stomach and woke up without pain. Marriage did not erase her past overnight. Lucía struggled with guilt, with fear that the food would stop, that kindness always had an expiration date. She hid bread under the bed again, out of habit. Mateo noticed, and instead of questioning her, he filled the pantry even more. "So you'll never worry," he said, simply. The unexpected turn came when Doña Rosa fell ill. Weak and alone, she sent word asking for help. Lucía's heart twisted. Years of hurt battled with the quiet compassion she had learned from Mateo. Together, they went to her mother's house, bringing food and medicine. Doña Rosa, seeing her daughter strong and nourished, finally broke. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid there would never be enough." Lucía understood then that hunger can live in the heart as much as in the body. She forgave, not to excuse the past, but to free herself from it. The true climax of Lucía's transformation came during a harsh drought. Crops failed, animals suffered, and many families went hungry. Mateo opened the ranch, sharing what they had. Lucía cooked day and night, remembering her own hunger and refusing to let others feel invisible. She stood in front of the same people who once looked through her and offered them food with steady hands and a gentle smile. In those moments, she realized how far she had come, not just from hunger, but from fear. Compassion had not only saved her, it had grown within her, multiplying. Years later, the ranch was known not for wealth, but for warmth. Travelers spoke of a shy rancher and his wife who fed the hungry and listened to the broken. Lucía, once starved daily by circumstance and neglect, had become a woman who nourished others with both food and hope. Her story spread quietly, like all true kindness does. And in the end, it carried a simple truth that resonated far beyond her village, far beyond borders. A single act of compassion can change the course of a life. When we choose to see, to give, to love without conditions, we don't just fill empty stomachs, we heal invisible wounds and remind the world that humanity, even when tested, can still be gentle.